We're joined by Dan Perry. He's a world affairs analyst, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what are the potential diplomatic and political consequences for the UK if they make a decision to recognize a Palestinian state?
I don't think the UK will be harmed as such, but the question is whether they might not inadvertently undermine the very cause that they seek to advance. Because the criticism of this move by Starmer basically says that it will be perceived among Palestinians and in the wider Arab world as validation of Hamas's strategy of attacking Israel, invading the country, massacring over 1,000 people, and sparking a calamitously catastrophic war. It will be seen as something that worked because finally the UK was compelled to recognize Palestine and other countries alongside it. And therefore Hamas will be strengthened. Now, Hamas doesn't actually want a Palestinian state. Hamas wants to destroy Israel and to replace it with a single state on the entirety of the Holy Land territory, Israel plus the West Bank plus Gaza. And as long as Hamas is around, and as long as Hamas is strengthened, and as long as they are militarized, Israel will absolutely take no further risks to enable the establishment of a Palestinian state. They won't pull out of the West Bank, which is the absolute precondition, because you understand the West Bank is a strategic highland overlooking the entirety of Israel. It would render Israel about 12 miles wide, I believe, 10 miles wide or so, at its narrowest point. And if there's any chance that Hamas and fellow jihadists are controlling that territory and have independence as a Palestinian state, Israel's in grave danger. So the condition for nudging Israel to take this risk basically goes through eliminating Hamas as a military and governing force. Now, David Lammy and Keir Starmer say that's what they want, but they're recognizing Palestine unconditionally, which is why plenty of people in the UK and elsewhere would prefer that the UK would hold out recognition of Palestine as a carrot in order to compel the Palestinians to sort of get their act together and get rid of Hamas somehow, to compel Hamas to disarm. So one thing I would hope, regardless of which countries recognize Palestine, which is largely meaningless, is that these European countries also do something useful. And that useful thing would be to put together a plan that would condition reconstruction aid to Gaza on Hamas disarming, and would compel Israel to get out of the way and recognize that the Palestinian Authority needs to take over Hamas, but also make everything conditional, everything on Hamas disarming, as the Arab League has called for, as the European Union has called for, as pretty much the entire world is calling for, by just recognizing Palestine and forgetting about the toxic Hamas roadblock. I very much fear that the UK and other countries are committing a tragic comic error.
Right. Thank you very much, Dan, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic. Does Israel have any plans to ensure the safety of the Israeli hostages who are still in the captivity of Hamas?
I haven't seen a convincing plan. The government decided to, go into Gaza City with ground troops and initiate a gradual but ultimately full occupation of the Gaza Strip. And their critics warn, indeed, as your question suggests, that this will create great danger for the lives of the hostages, and of course, for Israeli soldiers and especially for Palestinian civilians. I haven't seen a compelling defense of the government's position. It's extremely unpopular in Israel, this decision to escalate the war. Everyone's against it. The military is against it. The military is executing this as slowly as possible in what they describe as a modular manner that basically is reversible as soon as negotiations restart and hopefully a deal is done. There is great criticism of the government along the lines of basically skepticism that they're doing this largely for political reasons, because Netanyahu's coalition would fall apart unless he acceded to the wishes of the far right, which wants the war to continue. And the far right is not shy about saying what they really want, which is finding a way to remove the Palestinian population and settle Gaza with Jews. The finance minister, who is far-right firebrand, Smotrich, is openly speaking of Gaza as a real estate bonanza. It is a disgrace. It is a moral abomination. And on the strategic side, I very much understand Israel's desire to ultimately eradicate everything of Hamas. I think most rational observers of the situation in Israel-Palestine agree with that goal. The goal is right. The goal is righteous. But this current strategy it seems antithetical to that very goal, especially as Israel's quite open about the fact that they want civilians to go further south to Moussaoui and other areas in central Gaza reasonable in order that they be out of the way and not be hurt. But they're also saying that they're okay with Hamas operatives leaving alongside the civilians to reestablish themselves in the towns of central Gaza. So what have they accomplished? They've accomplished nothing. It boggles the mind that a country as clever as Israel, that's had the successes that Israel's had against Hezbollah, against Iran, and in general throughout its existence. Israel is a sophisticated and clever country, but this government is pursuing the Gaza war in a manner so ruinous, so illogical, and so inexplicable, frankly, that it risks becoming very unpopular in Israel itself. My only hope is that Netanyahu needs to face elections within about a year, and I don't think he can go to elections with the war continuing. So, at the very least, even though it's horrible to think of politics determining matters of life and death, I think he has to stop the war eventually. Hopefully, well before that, the world community, and in particular the U.S., will find a way to compel an end game. Donald Trump could end the war in a matter of days, if not hours, if not minutes, because Israel can't continue without the U.S., and Trump is allowing this to continue, which is why in my previous answer I said perhaps the Europeans can come up with basically a reconstitution of the Biden plan from late 2023, whereby Israel ends the war, the Palestinian Authority returns to Gaza, Hamas is basically forced by the entirety of Arab and Palestinian public opinion to disarm, because all reconstruction depends on that. And Israel receives some carrots itself in the form of normalization with Saudi Arabia, and who knows, perhaps even, and I believe this is a future discussion for us, with Syria and even Lebanon.
Now, looking at the leaders coming in, especially now focusing on Ahmed al-Shara, the Syrian leader, and his past, what do you think what he brings to the table to United Nations General Assembly, and what do you think he will push for over there?
Well, Ahmed al-Shara brings a fascinating question that is both philosophical and geopolitical. Can there be redemption for a jihadist? The answer until recently would have been, well, there's pretty much no precedent for it. Ashara was a former a jihadist leader in Syria. He was not a good guy, and the regime that they established, his group, essentially in the northwest of Syria, around the Idlib area, was not the worst jihadist regime. It was by no means equivalent to Islamic State in Raqqa and Mosul, but it was pretty bad. And it was a light theocracy, and it was something of a mafia. And expectations were not that high that he would emerge as the leader that Syria needs, who is inclusive, who is respectful of the secular background of Syria, and of the need to be secular because Syria has too many different religious sects, and who would nudge Syria maybe even towards, dare we hope, some version of democracy, and who would be peaceable towards Syria's neighbors, and in particular towards Israel, and who would break Syria's reliance on assistance from Iran and all the toxicity that comes with that. To everyone's amazement, to a large degree, not fully, but to a large degree, he seems to be doing that with some success. There have been hiccups, to be sure, like the massacre of Druze in southern Syria just about a month or two ago. And there, of course, have been killings of Alawites who were loyalists of the previous Assad regime. So it has not been smooth sailing. But Ashara is in New York to cement the positive vision of him as a leader who is somewhat progressive in Syria and who the world can work with, and basically who can compel outsiders to forget about his jihadist past, and who can get Syrians to forget about his jihadist past and trust him as a leader. It's nothing short of amazing should he succeed. And to a degree, he's already gone much of the way by getting Trump to lift sanctions on Syria merely by charming him in Riyadh 4 months ago. Uh, that's kind of ridiculous, but what really would be a genuine step forward would be for Bashar to agree to a security pact with Israel, which would be potentially a big step towards normalization with Israel. Now, Trump is somewhat disappointed with his lack of success so far in ending the Gaza war, ending the Ukraine war. India, as you know, and Pakistan are not going along with his narrative that he made peace between them. The peace he supposedly made in Central Africa is very much unraveling. He could really use a win, and that win would be if Bashar agreed to make peace with Israel.
Right. Thank you very much, Dan Perry.